So today I sit down with Ross Hamilton of Dome PM. Dome are a small business in the Northeast, headed by Ross and his fellow business partner, Andy. I say specialising in cost and PM. Ross is an absolutely lovely bloke. In fact, I love this business. They're small, but I think you're going to do things right. And we have a really good, frank discussion about their success in the early years, the fact that things petered off a little bit in 2025, but it's given them renewed focus and direction in terms of what they want 2026 and beyond. In fact, they've got a 5-year plan now up until 2030. Really love my chat with Ross. Good guy. I think a lot of you will get a lot of value from this if you're a small startup and you want some enthusiasm and encouragement about what to do and how to grow a business. Right, well, I'm delighted to be joined by Ross Hamilton of Dome PM. Ross, welcome.
Morning, how are we doing?
Very good.
Good.
Ross, you're flying the flag. You are the first of all of our podcast guests from the Northeast. So thank you for coming down today.
Yeah, no problem at all. Glad to be here.
Good. So to begin with, can you just tell us who Dome are, in terms of, kind of current headcount, key people in the business, current sectors you focus in?
Yeah, no problem. So the business started in January 2022. Myself and my business partner, Andy Horseman, 50% each share the business together. The headcount at the moment is 5 FTE. I say stroke 6 because we have a sort of consultant on a day rate for certain projects and things like that. Mm-hmm. So turnover, it's an interesting journey. So the business was started by myself, purely myself. Andy joined me about 6 months in, and there's a little bit of a story to that and a little bit of a backstory, which we might get onto. Yeah. So year one turnover, which was 12 months of me and 6 months of Andy, was very good. We had a strong start. We had a couple of clients who helped us right from day one. So turnover in year one was 280, which was decent, which was very good. Year two, we continued to grow. Some nice projects came in. We got to 420.
Brilliant.
Year three, which was the calendar year 2024, we had a bumper year. We ended up at pretty much 700k. And by this time, we'll come on to the sort of recruitment journey and staff and things like that. Obviously, we'd started employing people by that point. And then interestingly, last year, 2025, year four of the business, we've sort of taken a step back. In terms of revenue and turnover, that was more in the sort of 550k mark. So still a good number, for the 5 people that we've got. But I think we've learned some lessons as to why that's happening. And there's one or two things out of our control, like everybody in this chair will tell you, in terms of projects being paused, decisions being delayed, whether it's things in planning or whether it's investment decisions from clients have had an impact. Yeah. But it's not always a growth like that. So we've had a nice growth, and then we've probably went a bit like that.
I think to give you some comfort, I think there's also that's the industry. That's probably the industry's journey as well. I would say, the post-COVID years were really good years. There's the bounce back out of COVID. I remember when we all watched one of the various programs about them telling us what's going to happen around COVID, and the kind of hockey stick thing that's going to bounce back, and everyone's like, really, is it going to bounce back? And it bloody did. 22, 23 were decent years. 24 started to lose a bit of momentum. And I do think, I would say a lot of my clients would say, and I would say me personally, what I do for a living, I'm a really good barometer of the market. Yes. If I'm busy, it means my clients are busy. And I would say, 25 was not a great year for us either, to be honest. So,
not alone.
There's always external factors and internal factors. Yes. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
We can all run our businesses better. We can all do more BD. And I think that's one of the issues a lot of businesses fail in, is they get busy, and BD struggles because they're fully utilised, especially in a small business like yours. You're utilised, aren't you? So you can't do everything all the time, and sometimes some balls.
100%. I think that's the sort of. It's something you intuitively know, and Andy and I know. It doesn't mean we were able to prevent it from happening, because we, without going into too much of the sort of ins and outs of it, we probably in year 2 when we were growing, we made our first sort of salaried member of staff appointment. Then we've made another in probably year 2, year 3. We've got a placement student. We've got a degree apprentice, which is going really well. And it's nice having that sort of young energy in the office and within the business. But probably partly through year 3 and that really good year we had when it sort of, dare I say, things were coming quite easily to us. And maybe that introduces a little bit of complacency, to be honest, subconsciously. We were on the QS side of the business because I'm a development surveyor by trade, project manager, and he's the chartered QS. Particularly on the QS side of the business, we needed more support and we wanted it at a senior level. And we went through a little bit of a process of trying to recruit a senior associate type level individual. And for one reason and another, it just didn't pan out at the time. So we then went down the route of these junior members of staff, which obviously lightens the load a little bit, but ultimately it doesn't lighten it like it would with a senior individual.
No.
And for that reason, I would say probably for the last year or so, particularly from Andy's point of view, and to a degree mine, that ability to be out there and, having coffees with people and seeing clients and looking ahead for the next project 6-12 months down the line, that our ability has been restricted in that regard. And I think that's where we've really sat down and looked at that late last year, early this year, come up with a 5-year plan. And that involves certain things around recruitment and probably being more proactive than we were. Because I think certainly in our first 2-3 years, our mantra was, we'll work really hard. The clients are coming to Dome because they know Ross and Andy initially, and they trust Ross and Andy and they value our judgment. We worked really hard. We had good financial years, as we've talked about. We were able to spin the plates, still bring new work in, and put money in the bank. So we were,
which is important, and to stop on that, that's really important, Ross. That I think a lot of small businesses don't realise is like, when you have those good years, don't be crazy. Don't go out and buy Ferrari. Not that I'm sure you did do, but you know what I mean. Put money in the bank because then you don't know what's coming down the line, and that would be, I would absolutely say that was a failure of my first business, is that we were just adamant. We were just like reinvesting all the money every year, mainly by growing headcount. 2007 we rented and spent an absolute fortune on the fit out of a new office. Because at 2007, if you'd have asked us, and we were pretty naive at that time, probably by that point, late 20s, early 30s, I guess we've made that decision. And we just thought it was going up and up and up and up. And of course, 2008 had a completely different take on that for us all.
That was a time for me.
And we were just screwed because we had no money in the bank, so we had no way of weathering then what turned out to be a pretty awful period of time.
And it's interesting, isn't it? We've went down a path which was what you might regard as cautious or prudent or sensible. We didn't. We're guys, with young families and mortgages and stuff like that, and that is a factor. Some people don't think about that as much as others, but we weren't willing to necessarily spend on people and infrastructure and overheads and without having it there or emptying the coffers. So we took that path. Now, had we taken another path and had that in year 3 resulted in us getting an associate level QS in, I think the journey might have looked a bit different. And arguably we might even be in a stronger position now.
I get that.
But that's not where we are, and that's. So you learn, you sort of roll with the punches, and we've got a plan looking ahead now. So that's good.
Good, brilliant. Let's go right back to the beginning then. How did you first get into the industry, Ross?
Just doing A-levels like probably a lot of people. So I'm 45, so that would have been sort of mid-late 90s doing A-levels. Didn't know what I was. Fancied university, was relatively academic. So, just looking at university prospectus, I quite fancy the look of that. And it was planning and development surveying.
Okay.
So, I've watched a number of these episodes. I think you have different types of backgrounds on here. I'm a development surveyor. I could have ended up being a planning consultant, know, if I'd turned left maybe after the degree, but I ended up in more in development and then ultimately project management. So I did planning and development surveying, Northumbria University. So I didn't go away for university, which is a bit of a regret, but I didn't come out with much debt, so that was probably helpful.
Yeah.
So stayed at home. Did a university degree, did a placement year with English Partnerships in Milton Keynes, of all places, which is full of roundabouts.
Weird place in Milton Keynes.
Interesting place. So English Partnerships are now Homes England, and there have been various different things in between. So Government Regeneration Agency, did a placement year there, did my final year at university. They rang us halfway through the year and said, do you want to come and be an assistant surveyor? So come back to Milton Keynes. So I did that for a couple of years, in my early 20s. Then they did actually have a Gateshead office. They had offices dotted around the country. They've got the slap bang in Newcastle city centre now. Came back up after a couple of years. And then in 2006, when the world was a buoyant place and property development was easy and banks lent loads of money, I responded to an opportunity as a development surveyor with a local, small, northeast-based property development company, Circle Red Properties. They're no longer around. They're not one of the sort of big developers that you see on the scene now. There were a couple of wealthy guys in the northeast, a managing director who ran the business, and then there was me and another lad who used to find the sites, and I would development appraisals, take them through planning, work with design teams. But then 2008 happened, as you touched upon. So I spent 2.5 to 3 years there, and then ultimately I was made redundant.
Yeah.
So I was made redundant in late 2008, and it's interesting how things pan out. But I was ultimately on the dole, if you want to call it that, for 4 months, because
it was brutal time. It was,
I watched one of your episodes the other week, and one of the guys referred to the credit crunch and Davis Langdon in Manchester, I think, going from 120 to 40, and that would have been the same across the UK. So I was 4 months out of work because nobody was appointing, development managers or project managers or QSs.
I often say that, like, obviously Leeds, my hometown, there wasn't a crane. A lot of people now who never lived through 2008 just don't get how severe it was. But there wasn't a crane on the horizon in Leeds City Centre until 2013.
Wow.
In terms of the big developments, just wasn't any. Nothing got built until 2000. That's how much of an impact 0809 was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And London was a completely different place. It always has been. It's got its own ecosystems. A lot of money in London. But the north, or the regions generally, I think, massively got impacted in 0809.
Yeah, and so I ultimately got back into work in sort of spring, summer 09, went to work for One North East, one of the regional development agencies under the Labour government, and that was partly because I'd had a background in English Partnerships and New Generation. Managed to secure a post there. That was good. I only stayed there about 18 months, and to be honest, it was when then the coalition got in 2010, and one of the mantras was get rid of all the quangos, so the RDAs were going. So I was like, I'm like the Grim Reaper here. So, but ultimately, I was working with Turner and Townsend at the time. I was a client of theirs on a couple of things, and they approached me, so I went to work for Turner and Townsend in Newcastle.
Right.
In late 2010. That was my first foray into consultant project management. So I was 30 by that point. So the first 8 years of my career were client side, if you like.
Right, interesting.
And went to work for T&T. Great, good business, good people, great setup. Worked for them in Newcastle for 3 years. Then there was an opportunity to move to Faithful and Gould in Newcastle as an associate, helping run their project management team in Newcastle.
Right.
So I went there in 2013. Left there 2020, had a year with a small SME in Newcastle, which was sort of a bit of a halfway house between working for the corporate and setting up on my own, and then Dome was set up in late 21, but officially January 22. So I was always conscious that actually early in my career I'd jumped my CV might have looked like I jumped around a bit.
Yeah.
But then I had a good sort of 7 years at F&G, and that was ultimately the longest I'd worked anywhere. And I was responsible for managing the project management team, and if you like, second in command in the Newcastle office, delivering a couple of big projects in Scotland, big projects in Newcastle for great clients. I was probably primarily responsible for BD within the Newcastle office in my time there, with the support of others in the team. So I was able to get much more involved in business management, BD, networking in the role I had at F&G than the role I had at T&T, and that was ultimately what probably piqued my interest in doing it for yourself, I think.
And so when did that seed start to grow in your head about maybe, one day wanting to do your own thing?
It was probably late 2019, so that was where Andy and I worked together. Andy graduated and he was a QS. He's a few years younger than me, 5-6 years younger than me. He was running QS team at F&G, probably a couple of years after I joined. We'd worked together as PM and QS on a couple of big projects, worked well together, similar outlook on things, do the right thing for clients, go the extra mile, but give valued advice. So we had worked together and worked effectively together, and I think we're well respected within the marketplace in Newcastle. So probably late 2019, again, a sort of fairly big world event just around the corner, which we didn't know at the time. I sort of said, "Have you got 2 minutes, Andy?" And we had a chat in the office in Newcastle. I said, and I just asked him a blunt question: "Have you ever thought about setting up your own business?" Because at the time I thought, and still do, the sort of dual angle of the PM and QS is quite helpful if you can make that work.
Yeah.
And his honest answer was, well, no, not really, but talk to us. So we had a chat, and through that winter of 1920, it's probably fair to say we were talking, thinking about how it might work. The obvious, thinking about the odd client or two we could try in a under the radar approach. I absolutely tip my hat to the guys who I've heard on here who said I just started without a client, because that wasn't really in my thoughts. I was, we need something to start with.
Yeah, it's pretty brave doing it without, isn't it? Brave or stupid, what's your way?
That blows my mind. You've obviously got, you've got to have something behind you, I suppose, to do that. So we were doing that through the winter of into 2020, and ultimately it got to February of 2020 and March, and this thing was happening across the world. And I think I said to Andy, this is obviously going to have to go on the back burner now. So that's what happened. I'd become frustrated with one or two things within the big business. This is not a slight on that business, on the people in that business. I just got a little bit sick and tired of some of the corporate things, the governance, the sort of behaviours, the sort of some levels of the bureaucracy, and I absolutely understand why it's there. It's like it's almost has to be there.
For that size of business, I think without a doubt there needs to be some structure. Inevitably, as your business grows, more structure will come in. So it goes without saying.
Inevitably. So I'd just got to the point where I had. It sounds really harsh, but I'd had enough of it. I'd spoken to these couple of guys who were shareholders of a small SME in Newcastle, who do interior design but also do project management. They were ultimately nearing retirement. There was an opportunity to sort of, I dare say, try before you buy type thing. Right. I think they saw an opportunity to employ me. Maybe I could take some equity from them. We didn't quite know how that was going to work, so I joined there in the autumn of 20, a company called Ward Robinson, and they've now carved their business up and rebranded the PM side. I worked there for a year. It was good. The two guys are good guys. I just didn't see a way to me buying into their business with what that business was, and I suppose working alongside the other sort of key senior people to help grow that business. And ultimately in probably about a year in sort of autumn 21, I had brought a pretty big project to them, a project called Net Park, which is in County Durham. So it was backed by Durham County Council. My client was a company called Clear Futures. they were partnering with Durham County Council, and ultimately ended up being a £58 million business park development, science and technology, industrial office unit. I'd brought that to them, and we were working through sort of very early briefing concept stages. And then one day I just had a bit of a moment where, because I knew the client at Clear Futures personally very well, and it looked like the project was going to advance into sort of REBA 3, REBA 4. There was commitment there from the budget holders, if you like, at the council. And then I just looked at the fees for the project management, and I thought, why am I not just doing this? Like, you know, there's just like light bulb. Why can't I just do this? So spoke to the client. He said, yeah, well, if I was in effect a sub-consultant to Clear Futures, providing PM services to them, badged as Clear Futures. He said, well, if you set yourself up, if you get your company set up, if you get your PI, that was the most difficult bit. If you get your PI sorted and you do it and you set it all up proper, absolutely, your company, which is never name at that time, obviously, can provide these services, and that's no problem. So, and he was great, and I'll forever be grateful to him because he helped trigger it, and so the business was set up, and it was just me because in the time I'd went to the SME in Newcastle, Andy had also, a little bit after I left F&G, he'd left F&G to go and work for Turner and Townsend, running their Teesside cost management business unit. So it was just me. So I set it up to deliver project management on this project, and actually, fortunately, I think, but you've got the relationship, so these things sort of work themselves out. I got a nice commission, which I'm still working on now with South Tyneside Council, working on a programme of extra care developments, and I'm sort of their client advisor and have been for 4 years, nice. and that's great. And we're now building 2 of them, and the third one's on the way, and that's a big thing for them and residents within the borough. So there was 2 nice jobs, really. Like at the end of month 1, I was able to send 2 quite nice invoices, and they got paid within 30 days, and it just. And when I look back now, not everybody will have that luxury, but within 4 or 5 months, there was a reasonable amount in the bank, and it was nice. It felt like. So there was a bit of fortune involved there, because that particularly Net Park was a big project, and I think some people are often surprised. Okay, you're a small SME, you delivered a 50 million quid contract. Kia have built it, yeah. I wouldn't mind another one next year, but so that was how it sort of all played out. In
you always need a bit of luck in business, but arguably you also make your own luck, because ultimately it's because you developed a trusted relationship with that client.
Yep.
It's always this thing, isn't it? Never, always do a good job. Never screw people over. Always be decent. Always be honest. And people remember you, don't they, at the end of the day?
And then, 100%. And then Andy joined in the halfway through year 1. That was a little bit of a surprise to me. We had a coffee in the spring. I'd been going 3 months. Just had a catch up. I thought, well, he's there, T&T. He's on that path there. That's great. Good luck. But he expressed an interest in still doing it together. So we worked that out. We worked a deal out. Obviously, I had the shares at that point.
Yeah.
But, I trust and value Andy, and it would never be we almost didn't even have the conversation, but I knew it wasn't right that he came and worked for me. That was never the plan. So we worked out a deal, and we worked out if he, in terms of bringing QS work in and stuff like that. So ultimately, by the end of year 1, we were 50-50, and that was the right thing to do for the business.
Yeah, good. People can get too greedy, can't they, with equity, and at the end of the day, they lose sight of the fact that that's why they chose to. They were invested in growing the business because they had equity. So why would you then expect somebody else to come in, run 50% of the business, and not have equity? So it's fair play to you for just don't know what the right word is, humble, if that's the right word. I don't know if that's the right word, but for doing that, and at the end there, then Andy's now as invested as you are to grow the business.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely is. And we're equal, and the market sees us as equal, and we run the business together, and we bounce ideas off each other, and we've come up with a a little bit of a plan going forward, and that, you know, and you sort of ride the peaks and troughs, you know. So that was great. You know, Net Park was a project which really was the backbone of our business, certainly for the first two and a half years, and then. But then, you know, Andy brought a really big QS commission in on a big school building program, and that's then, you know, and there's just times where the PM side's a bit busier, and there's times where the QS side's a bit busier, and
100%,
and you know, we're not sat there counting. No, you've brought that in, you've brought that in. That's not the, you know, we're relaxed about that, and I hope that sort of comes across in the way we sort of are with staff in the office, and you know, we want people to enjoy the work. You said something earlier about do a good job, be a good person. Business planning and targets and things like that, and we'll get onto it, no doubt. Really, for the first 2 years, probably even longer, 2 to 3 years, our was we want to do a good job, we want to work for good clients, we want to be good people, we want to give valued advice, and as glib as this sounds, the rest will look after itself, and it did. But I think it maybe only takes you so far as a small business. There are then other things you maybe need to consider, which we are considering now.
But I'd still say, Ross, those fundamentals though shouldn't never change at the end of the day. If you know, I do honestly think some consultant businesses overcomplicate their own lives by just forgetting those basics. Do a good job and be decent. It's a pretty solid plan, to be fair.
People work with people, and yes, AI and everything else is coming along, but there will still be people interpreting that data. There will be people presenting that data. You've got to sit down with your client. You've got to work with an architect. You've got to work with a contractor. You know, there is no. It may as well be enjoyable along the way. You know, we absolutely stand by that, and you know, in recruitment and employing people, I'll not use the word, but we've got a bit of a no policy. You know, it's you know, we want people coming into a small business. I think in a big business, you know, you can be a little bit more carefree about recruitment decisions, and a bad apple in the corner of 30 or 40 people is probably easily hidden. A bad apple in a 6-person office is not easily hidden. So.
Yeah, and I put a post on LinkedIn today about this. Just like, you know, if someone is not right, just they need to go, because ultimately it just chews up your brain, because you're constantly stressed about it. The rest of your team are looking at you going, "What are you doing? This individual's not right, and we can see they're not right." But thirdly, just for the individual themselves, if your business is not right for them, then you're actually being fair to them by saying, "This isn't working. You know, go find somewhere where you will have a future and will be your home." Yeah,
and we had a little 1 or 2 bumps on the road with recruitment and people along the way. It's not been perfect, but we've got a good team now. But I absolutely agree with that. We've got a good team. Got senior PM Duncan works with us. He's brilliant. He's been here 2 years. I think he's happy. I hope he's happy. He seems happy. He's taken a lot of the load off me in terms of he just delivers projects, and he delivers projects for some of our important and key clients.
Good.
Newcastle University, New College Durham. He's a very good senior project manager, very good at what he does, and he's a nice person, and that goes a long way as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So 5 now. Obviously, we're talking at the moment about additional recruits. So I know you're recruiting, but what's the plan? What's the plan over the next few years?
Yeah, so we sat down in December and again in January, and it's the first time we've looked more than 1-2 years in the future, to be honest, and happy enough to say that. Some people will do a 5-year business plan at day one. We didn't. But we have now. So we set up so in January 26, we said, what do we want to look at the end of 2030? 5 years. I don't think we want to, and we're in the Northeast, and that in itself is the Northeast economy, and I don't want to sort of put a glass ceiling above us, but it's not as buoyant as some of the other regions yet. It might get there. So we've not set overly ambitious plans, but by the end of year 5, what we've said is we would like turnover, we'd like headcount to be somewhere in the region of 15. We think that's achievable, comfortably achievable. Hopefully we'll get there sooner than 5 years. You know, that means there's a certain number of projects you need to be working on, live projects on a monthly basis. Turnover would probably be in the sort of 1.5 million mark, something like that, maybe a touch more. So that's where we want to be. And we've set some plans in place as to how we need to get there. And the first one is people, because we're at 5 at the moment, and we've talked about where the limits are with that. So we're looking at the moment actively in the marketplace for senior, stroke associate, project manager and cost manager. And, you know, that is, if that person is minded to come and help shape the business and in time possibly look at equity, that would be great. If they've got a sort of growth mindset and ambition and want to be involved in BD and things like that, that's great. They don't have to be that person if they are, you know, very good at delivering projects and of a senior level and can take more of the burden away from me on that front, and definitely some of the burden away from Andy on the QS side, and ultimately allow Andy and I to have a little bit more breathing space to help grow the business and win more work, then that's fine. So I would like to think if we sat here later this year or even 6 months down the line, we'd have 2 more people in.
Good.
And to be honest, you know, the pipeline for this year justifies it, but it's not extraordinary. So we are investing to grow because we are confident that with either other people who bring new client relationships or other people who allow us to do more networking, BD, bid 1 or 2 more things that we get opportunities for, consider frameworks and things like this going a little bit further down the line, we know we will drive more opportunities, and if we get opportunities, we'll convert them. So yeah, we want to grow the team by 2 this year. We moved into a nice new city centre office last summer with an eye on the team growing and having a really nice,
it's a nice
professional.
space.
It's good, right on the Tyne Bridge. Which they are currently doing lots of roadworks on. So I hear lots of horns beeping outside the window quite regularly at the moment. But yeah, lovely space. 1 or 2 other sort of built environment consultancies have gone in there, which is good. Good. We'll have a chat with them. Really nice meeting facilities. And to be honest, they're putting a pretty swanky looking gym in the ground floor at the moment, a nice roof terrace there, going to be open later this year. So, you know, it's nice amenities for staff, and hopefully, I think, you know, with the way of hybrid and office working, and I think that is important, and that's fine. We recognise that. So yeah, we want to grow with people. And I touched upon frameworks because to date, I would say 95% of our work has been and continues to be relationship driven or referrals. So it might be a relationship with an architect or a planning consultant and they recommend us, or it might be actual one-to-one client relationships. I think Andy and I realised that in the Northeast, you know, it's not London, it's not Manchester, it's got an amount of activity, but it's got quite a lot of public sector spend as opposed to private. And we do pretty well. We work for a lot of good clients in the public space, a couple of various local authorities. Obviously, university is not public sector, but it's on that cusp. We work for Newcastle University, Northumbria University, University of York. Great clients, a couple of Russell Group universities, and that is relationship driven. We know the right people in estates. We get opportunities. We're often competing on those, but we're getting opportunities that maybe other SMEs aren't. So that's good. But I think we're cognizant of the fact that there probably is a ceiling on our growth in the Northeast if we don't ultimately get on one or two frameworks, because that's where a lot of the work in the Northeast is. And we've got to be careful. We don't want to drive fees down and have a race to the bottom. We want ultimately to earn good money on these projects. Sure. But obviously to sustain a business in the Northeast of that many people, we either probably have to go on frameworks, start going further out of region, or maybe doing an alternative service stream. So in the first instance, it will be, we've set a target to be, by the end of year 5, to probably be pretty active on 2 or 3 frameworks. And it's always chicken and egg, isn't it? We looked at a couple of the frameworks in year 2 or 3, and you look at the questions, and whilst you know you could do the jobs that will come through these frameworks, you can't get on because you haven't got the case studies, and yes, you've got them personally in a former life, but so we know when they come back around in the next year or two, there'll be a bit of a target on that.
Good.
And that in itself will just drive a flow of opportunities, which we're going to need if there's 8, 9, 10, 11 people in the business. So yeah, we've got a plan, and it's now about us delivering it. Really.
Yeah, good. And sometimes, look, slow and steady wins the race, doesn't it? You know, you can't, like you say, you've got to work within the constraints of the market that you're in. You know, if there isn't as much private sector activity, then you do what you do. But still, you know, in 5 years, getting up to, you know, 15 staff members, you know, probably I imagine that point somewhere between 1.5 to 2 million turnover. Yep. You'd take that, wouldn't you? And then hopefully, as long as there's a decent profit in there as
absolutely.
well, that's all right.
You know, we look around the marketplace and we sort of do a little bit of analysis, and there's lots of good businesses that have been around 20, 30, 40 years in that sort of 5 to a dozen people bracket. And then you've got the big players in the north as well. You know, the two companies I've worked for, the G&T, all these sort of people. But there's quite a few, you know, more than you realise when you start listening out, SMEs in the space. And, you know, some of them are 2 and 3 people, some of them are 9 and 10, and they probably go up and down. And but there's a number of those businesses that we look at and think, well, okay, they've done a good job, but have they considered this sort of growth plan and the end game early enough? And some have and some haven't. And part of our plan in December and January was around, well, I set the business up when Andy came in, and frankly, at the end of year 1, did we know where we were going to be in a few years? No. Could it have been a lifestyle business? Maybe. If it had stayed just me, I've got a feeling it might have.
Right.
If it was just PM. But then as soon as Andy and I had the conversation halfway through year 1, and he was interested and we worked out a deal, it was probably never going to be a lifestyle business with sort of him bringing in QS work and me bringing PM work. It was always going to grow into a small business. But I think we realise now that we realised, you know, a little while ago, but we've set into action a plan now to get to a certain scale with an idea that you've got then something there of value, whether that's for a future sale or employees buying in, or, you know, just to leave a legacy in a way. Now, the more I think about it, we set up Dome 4 years ago, and, you know, if when I retire, whenever that is, it would just be a real shame more than anything else if it just then
100%.
Disappeared. Like, you know, just as, I don't know what that sounds like, but that would be a shame. So then, but then there's the obvious sort of planning for exits and things like that. So, but, you know, that's a long way down the line. We want to grow and, you know, work with our existing clients, do more for them, be a trusted advisor, and the journey will continue.
And I think, you know, consultancy businesses have got to be careful not to just try and grow for growth's sake. I would say that's definitely something we did with my first business, and it started to get to the point where it became unenjoyable and stressful. And I think, you know, you've got to enjoy the journey. I think as owners, when you start waking up, now don't get me wrong, as we know, owning a business is not all about fucking sunshine and rainbow. Sometimes it all goes wrong. Sometimes you have shit days. That is what it is. But if you start to have a point where you have more days on the trot where it's like, I'm not happy, I'm not enjoying this, don't want to go to work for the day, then you need to go, right, well, that's not what this was all all about to begin with at the end of the day. So you've got to be able to say, I'm enjoying the journey.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, and part of my original reason for setting up on my own, as I said, I was a little bit jaded with the sort of corporate world, and it was the freedom of being your own boss. And now this is turning into something different, and it's a small business, and there's staff coming in, and that gives you other responsibilities. But yeah, absolutely, you know, you still enjoy it. I certainly don't have any feelings of dread, and I certainly hope none of the people who work for us do. I think it's a nice working environment. We've got a nice atmosphere amongst the team, and we've got to try and maintain that as we grow. Even our growth plans are not conquering the world. It's just a nice, sustainable, profitable, well-regarded small business, and that's what we want to do.
Which would be a win, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
If you could say in 5 years' time, that's exactly what we've achieved. That would be that would be a win. That would be a great success. It wouldn't be, oh well, we've not reached our potential. That would be, you know what, I've got a business I'm still proud of, happy going to every day. I think my team are all happy being there every day, and we're making money. That's
yeah,
you know,
that's good.
As I said earlier, some consultant businesses, I think, overcomplicate their own lives as to what they want to achieve, and it's like, well, what are you chasing it for at the end of the day? You know, what's the, you know, so is it a headcount metric? Well, that's fine, but with that will have to come a lot of change if it's just, you know, trying to grow headcount for the sake of headcount. And there are some very, very good operators who are big businesses who, you know, if you try to compete with them, almost you probably get a bloody nose because they're very good at what they do.
Yeah.
So there's actually a lot to be said for being a really good small business that just does an effective job. Everyone's happy and you make profit. Happy days.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I think there's a lot in that.
Absolutely.
So Ross, what would you say? What mistakes do you think you made in those kind of 4 years of running a business?
Yeah, I think we touched on it a little bit. I think the timing of recruitment decisions and not being able to get the right people. So that, whether that's a mistake or not, I don't know. But I think the timing of being cautious or prudent, as I touched on earlier, it doesn't feel like a mistake, but it's got us into a position where turnover did drop last year, and it will probably be similar to last year this year, as opposed to year 3, which was sort of the high point so far. So you know, in that sense, do we want our turnover to go up years 1, 2, 3, drop to 4 and then level off? Well, no, we don't. You know, we've just talked about the figures. We need it to be, you know, doubling and trebling over the next few years. So
yeah.
I think in hindsight, it was a mistake not being more proactive or aggressive in recruitment in year 2 going into 3, and we were having a great year and we were, you know, working on lots of projects. But then, as I say, various projects got canned. A university got canned, a big school building programme up in Northumberland we worked on for a while, but then, you know, a bit of red tape got in the way and we weren't able to work on the big academy project later on, which was a bit of a blow in terms of the fee there. So, you know, it's there are certain things in your control and there are not. I'm not sure it's a mistake as such, but we have never had a sort of business management system. But we are looking into one now, and I think we're having a trial next week of a system called CMAP, which it comes at a cost, but 1 or 2 other businesses in the Northeast of a similar scale, a bit bigger than us, but engineering businesses and architects practice use it. So we're going to have a trial of that, and that is, it feels like a bit of a dirty word, but that includes timesheets. And I say it's a dirty word because that was one of the real bugbears in the bigger businesses, was the timesheet system and the behaviours that it drove around sort of, you know, time on jobs and maybe not quite the right time on jobs and sort of masking issues and things like that. So I'd really didn't enjoy that part of the big corporate. So we've never had a timesheet system. We manage our cash flow well, which you should be able to if you're a PMQS business. We know where we are on jobs with fees, with invoicing, but we don't accurately record time spent on each job and haven't done. Intuitively, we know job 1's definitely made some money, job 2's definitely made some money, job 3 probably lost money, but we don't know. We don't know. You know, and in a world where we work with data, people might think, bloody hell. But we're comfortable with it, but we're going down it. So maybe there's an argument to introduce something. And we're looking at 1 or 2 other platforms, and I think 1 or 2 of your other guests and people I've spoken to in the industry have mentioned other things which are possibly a bit more cost effective and you can maybe use as a stepping stone to something like this that we're looking at. But yeah, we're going down that route. So maybe formalising that a bit earlier, I think might have helped us, might have gave us a bit more accuracy on some things around time spent, resource planning, fees as much as you can, you know, in terms of what should the fee be. versus what it needs to be in the marketplace and things like that. You know, everybody's got to make a commercial decision. So I think recruitment definitely, and potentially maybe earlier adoption of a bit of support in terms of tech, in terms of business management. And that, you know, at the minute we're managing cash flow in a workbook, invoices and various things in that workbook. We're managing opportunities and operations in another workbook, and it works fine. You know, Andy and I sit down every week really in different forums to look at different things, and it works. It's just in different places, and I think we're coming around to the view that if we want to be 10, 12 people, and we maybe need somebody else as part of a senior leadership team, we need something a bit more at the click of a finger, basically.
Yeah. So I think, so let's look at both of those. I think the staff thing, you know, I spend a lot of time advising businesses your size, and they'll often come to me, and I think to an extent this is I would say probably looking at the numbers thing, and that's why they think they want to do it. They'll say, you know, I want to hire, whether it be QS or PM, or, you know, I want to hire somebody who's maybe 3-4 years, maybe got their APC, maybe haven't got their APC, that kind of level of individual. And that'll help me massively. And it's like, well, will it? Will it? Won't. You know, there's nothing wrong. You know, I'm really proud of you guys that you've gone and taken on apprentices already, which is brilliant. And I think more businesses need to do that. However, in terms of some of the issue is that you go win a job, and you don't have a really good senior who can just sit on it. I know you were saying that's certainly probably been an issue for Anne this side, because you've certainly got Duncan on your side. And so sometimes it's the wrong mentality for businesses, even small businesses, that, oh, bloody hell, I don't know, let's say a senior to associate grade individual up in the northeast is going to cost you anywhere from probably 50 or 70k, let's say, for argument's sake, maybe a bit more actually. And it's like, fuck, that's a lot of money to spend for a small business. And it is, and you're not going to employ 10 of them in one go, but if you employed that one individual, and Andy knows, you know, I've got this individual now who can just look after this, and I know they're rock solid, they can deliver the job. Right, I can get out there and do more BD. Yeah, because that's ultimately the issue, isn't it? You get sucked into delivering projects, and you suddenly just haven't got the bandwidth to then get out there and win more work. Oh,
that is the issue. Then there's the balance of, and if you get the right senior person, then this becomes less of an issue. But then there's the balance of, one of the things we've said, and I think we still even say it on our website, is, you know, it's director-led service.
Yeah.
You know, and I suppose I'll take New College Durham as an example. Really valued client of ours. Used to be one of the big boys. Worked with them. We got a foot in the door. We were very close to the CFO, the chief exec. We're doing a number of projects for them. And at the outset, it would have been Andy and I working on them. But latterly, you know, when Duncan came in, I introduced him to one of the projects on site. Probably a little bit less client involvement because it's got into contract, but he's, you know, starts to understand and get to know the client. And now fundamentally the next one that's on the books, well, in fact there's two. One's just started on site, one's starting on site later this year. Duncan's running those jobs now. Andy's involved on the QS side, but Duncan is the main point of contact for that client on those jobs. But you've got to do that gently, and you've got to do it appropriately, and you've got to have the right people to help you, because 100%. The last thing we want is client A comes to Dome because they've got a good relationship with Ross and Andy, and 6 months down the line they put 2 other people on the job and they're not happy with it, because, you know, that's the worst situation for us. You know, any client we have now, we want them to still be a client of ours in 10, 15 years' time and enjoy the experience. So transitioning to a more light touch role from me or Andy on projects is a careful balance. And then there are certain projects where we will still be actively involved because it's a small business. I'm not getting to a point where I'm 100% managing the business or BD or whatever it may be.
Maybe arguably, nor should you ever be at that size business anyway. You should always still be on the tools.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So that sort of, you're right. We need to get people in to reduce the workload of the business owners in terms of project delivery to allow the growth in other areas. but then there's also making sure that our clients remain 100% happy with the service they're getting. And it's a difficult balance. You know, you work in the big businesses, and we all know how that works there in terms of, you know, winning bids and director turning up to the first meeting and then sort of mid or junior ranking guys and girls delivering projects. And some clients put up with that, but I think increasingly a lot don't. And I think, you know, by your this podcast series and the amount of people you've had on here and successful young businesses, it's testament to the fact that there's another way of doing it, and clients in all sectors seem to value that. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And then business management software. There's an argument when you're a small business, you can just, you like you say, you know intuitively everything that's going on inside the business. But that's not building you for future success.
No.
And so it's arguably much easier to get a bedrock of people who will all get bought into systems, processes that everyone you can tweak, and you've got the luxury of tweaking because you're not a big head count. But once you've got that, and you've got, you know, you and Andy, but also then a number of other people who are advocates of it, who are super users, who can support and train other people when they come into the business, straight away, then when somebody new comes into the business, and, you know, maybe not even this next hire, but hire number 5, when you are getting towards 10 people, that's really important then, that they come into, you know, a well-oiled machine, and that you're not having to do everything on the fly all the time.
Yeah, I agree, and that's our thought process, you know. So we'll have a trial and we'll see, and we'll hopefully invest in it, I think, or we'll invest in something, and it might be this one. You know, we've tried to do the right thing even from day one, even when it was just Andy and I. You know, we've got a brilliant IT support guy who was recommended to us by a civil and structural small business in the region. Sean has now got a burgeoning IT support business.
Good.
He's great. Answers the phone, 2 rings, sorts it out. You know, he remotely is on your laptop or staff's laptops, sorting out issues. You know, he's put a little bit of a sort of WebEx phone system in for us. He's done various things.
Good.
We set up, you know, proper contracts. You know, we got a bit of HR advice in terms of staff handbooks, contracts, you know, all these little things that you don't think about really at day one, but then, okay, we're starting to employ people. We need to do this properly. You know, if 100%. You put yourself back into your shoes at 25, you know, you maybe take a leap from a big practice to a small practice. You know, I understand why people would say to us, how safe is this and how secure is this? And absolutely no problem people asking those questions, and we've pretty open and share things with people who ask those questions if we think there's value in them. So and then, you know, we've got like an HR platform, Breathe HR it's called again. You know, it's not big costs, it's a few £100 a year or whatever, but it's all there for book and leave, appraisals, and it keeps it all, you know, you're sort of putting the building blocks in place so that you do it when there's 4 or 5 people, as you say, and it just becomes part of your business, and people feel like it's a legitimate business, and it's a safe environment, a secure environment, and a well-run environment.
And you're right. That's a good point. That's important for the recruitment aspect of it. At the end of the day, for business, if somebody feels, you can look at a small business and go, well, they're just flying by the seat of the pants. These guys aren't organised. They're not a real business. They're just like, they've got a couple of relationships and they're managing on that.
Yep.
As opposed to, all right, so I've got you've got a HR platform internally. You've got this, you've got that. You're managing your business well. That's all credibility, isn't it? Both actually for hiring, but also I guess for clients as well. Actually, you can say to a client, look, we've got this system. You can log into it, for example. All this kind of stuff, I think, really adds credibility to the business.
Yeah, I hope so. And as a project manager, I feel like it's almost the least I should be able to do. But I don't. Hopefully people don't take it for granted. There's been a bit of work there, and we've looked at different options, and we use Zero and things like that. And this management system can integrate with that if we go down that route. And Zero's a great tool. So anybody's thinking of setting up their own business, I couldn't sort of recommend it enough. I think it's brilliant, and it probably does a lot more than what it does for us. Yeah. But it works perfectly for us at the moment. We bank with Starling. Everything's on your phone. It's just it's the way of the world, and we'll maybe get onto that in terms of tech and things like that. But
Yeah, we have got to realise, haven't we? That's it. If you think about like all the things you use personally, forget work for us. Like all the things, like you say, I can't think last time I went into my bank. You can do it. You can do everything on the app. In fact, it frustrates me when I have to ring anybody now to get hold of the bank, and everything. The power in our phones is just mental. But now the great thing is the point to entry of either you buy a product that already has a standalone app that you can access on your phone, or the barrier to entry now to either creating them yourself or paying somebody to it for quite a cheap value. You can create so many things that just sit on the phone now, which is
you can. And cool. I mean, in terms of that, one of the things we put in our 5-year plan was with an eye on technology, and at the moment we use what I would regard as fairly standard things in an office environment. We use the full Microsoft suite. 365 SharePoint.
Yeah.
We use MS Project for a lot of pre-construction planning, particularly in terms of projects and engagement and, working through timelines and things like that. And that's good for reporting. We use Costex. Andy and the guys on the QS side use Costex. But one of the...
You'd be amazed, to just give you a bit of a feather in your cap there, you'd be amazed how many businesses bigger than yours would not be able to say that.
Right, okay.
They do not use Costex. They are still sat in Excel all the time. So, you'd be amazed just that in itself is like, honestly, there are businesses double, treble, 4 times your size that don't use Costex
It's
yet.
interesting because, so I'm not a QS.
Yeah.
So I have personally never used Costex.
Yeah.
But Andy had obviously used it for a lot of years in F&G and Turner and Townsend. Joined, initially it was like, he'll get by probably with Excel, and then once it got into sort of the end of year 1, start of year 2, and 1 or 2 bigger QS commissions came in, he said, we're going to need to invest in Costex. All right, okay, fine, yeah. If you think we need it, let's go for it. And then there's the annual setup cost. That's a bit more expensive than I thought. But
yeah, it's not cheap.
No, and then, and obviously every new member of staff needs a license and all of that. And
fucking hate software licenses, but you need them.
but now I watch the 2 young lads, Kyle's a placement student, Caleb, degree apprentice, and it's really interesting watching Andy sort of allocate work to them. And obviously, they're starting to do a little bit of client-facing stuff, but majority of it is sort of back of house, helping Andy with things and helping Duncan and I with certain things as well. We're getting them involved in some of the PM stuff because I think that's a good breadth of experience for them. But they're on Costex, like... I think they must go to sleep thinking of Costex because, they're using it quite a lot. So I think we get our money's worth out of it anyway.
And young people are just, it is a worry. I think people do need to worry. I think there's sadly a lot of ageism, I think, that is in the industry. But equally, some older professionals need to help themselves in terms of embracing it all and businesses that maybe don't use these products. And for example, it's not just Costex. I was going to say also, I bet there's a lot of companies out using MS Projects. I bet they're still doing things super manually in terms of how they're starting pre-contracts, etc. They're frustrating. I hate all SaaS products because you can only ever go up. You can't go down in licenses, and there's a lot of frustrations as a business owner with software. Having said that, if you want to be credible, and on top of that, you want to be efficient, this is the bit that a lot of consultancy owners I do not think are getting, is that they look at the cost of these licenses, and whether that be, tech, or whether it be something like, Costex, whether it be some business management platform, whatever it may be. I think businesses look at the cost of this, and what they're not realising is that there are businesses, large and small, who are using all these tools really effectively, and they're just more efficient. Their people can just get more done in a day, and it's not about, is that QS or is that PM better in one organisation or another? Obviously, that's a factor, but the other one is just how efficient are they with their time? How much can they get through in a day versus how much your guy who's still sat on Excel going to get through in a day?
Yeah, I think it's the used two words, efficiency and credibility, and they're both massively important. And I think on the credibility side, because we've come from larger businesses and had the access to those tools just like that, I suppose it's what we've known. So even if we were still just a 2 or 3 person business, I think we would be adopting MS Project and Costex. But certainly as we go to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and beyond. We absolutely need it. And then the other thing we have started to think about, very tentatively, I'll not say anything, it's gone further than that, is potentially the building of some kind of app of our own. And that's like 5 years down the line. But our thinking behind that is everybody, to one degree or another, but particularly the younger generation, live in their phone.
100%.
We can have various sort of philosophical discussions about that, but I know I'm 45 and I probably spend too much time on my phone. And
we all do, yeah.
And it is what it is. But our clients now, we're dealing with directors of estate and development directors and owners of other small businesses who are developing things, and clients of ours. And they're probably about our age, or often a bit older. But the clients in 10 years' time are probably those who are in the mid to late 20s now, who have grown up with a smartphone, who grow up with things at the, literally the, swipe of a finger. So our thought process is the job of a PM, the job of a QS, I don't think will fundamentally change in terms of the knowledge you need, the skills you need, the experience you need, but how you interface with your client, how you report data, how you provide recommendations to them might change. And ideally, we want to be ahead of that if we can. So, will we have a Dome app in 5 years' time? I don't know, but we're certainly thinking around that. And, that's around reporting in real time. Clients can just have access to maybe an app or a platform that we develop, and they can see where their project is on the 17th day of the month instead of a traditional end of month PM and cost report, and it's in a hard copy or it's a PDF. There might still be that goes along with it. But we've got an eye on that anyway, and I think it's not something that's going to happen this year. It might not even happen next year. But if we can grow the infrastructure of our business, we can have a couple of other senior people in, give us a bit more time, then maybe that's an avenue we can spend a little bit of time developing something on. And yes, it'll need investment. It'll need the support of somebody more tech savvy than me.
And my guess is that will happen before 5 years. I think the barrier to entry is just coming down all the time. That's with tech advancing. So yeah, my guess is my guess is if I had you on in 2 years' time, you'll have something in place.
Well, I think that will be a big success.
Yeah, good, brilliant. Look, Ross, it's been a really good chat. It's amazing how fast these things go. You probably won't realise because I've been monitoring the time slightly. We've been up to nearly an hour already,
okay.
So which is usually we try and cut it off a bit. So, last couple of questions I try to ask people is, who has been your kind of best boss or mentor, would you say, throughout your career that you can pinpoint as being someone who's, maybe somebody who encouraged you, supported you, acts as a catalyst for you? Who would you say that is?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think back to my career, and I think you can learn good and bad.
Yep.
And people will learn good and bad from me. Nobody's a perfect boss, as much as you might try to be. So when I worked at Circle Red Properties, the two wealthy shareholders, they couldn't have been more different characters if they tried.
Right, okay.
And I think back to sort of some of the board meetings in 2006 and 7 and 8, and I'm sat there as a youngish lad, and these guys have got a lot of money in the bank, and I'm looking at one of them sort of with a relatively sort of frugal, penny pinching attitude, and the other guy a bit more lavish and do this, do that, and I'm, and very different styles.
Yeah.
And then, I worked closely with Lawrence, who runs F&G or Akin Realis' Newcastle office. Got a lot of time for Lawrence. Really good guy. Still see him around town, and would really value his friendship, and we work together well. He included me in a lot of big things, and I was given opportunities to work on some big projects and with some good clients. He had a very nice, calm, relaxed, friendly style, and the office is reflective of that. And then I suppose another guy, wasn't a direct line manager, but a guy called Steve Armit at Turner and Townsend.
Yeah.
So when I was only at Turner and Townsend 3 years, and he wasn't my direct line manager, but he ran the Newcastle office, and he probably wasn't at that point too far away from the end of his career. I'd went in there, my first foray into the PM consultancy world. He had very much a door open style, but and he'd built, I think, probably a lot of his own personal success off the back of Nissan and things like that in the Northeast. And I'd been a key client of his, and he'd done very well in the business. And it's an interesting thing. What actually impressed me there's a number of things about Steve impressed me at the time. He was very, I think, probably pretty firm, but also very fair and very approachable. And I don't know if this would necessarily impress me now, but at the time, if you got into the office, he was already in. And if you left the office, he was still there. And I look back now and I think that genuinely at the time I respected that. But I don't necessarily expect the same now from my staff, or necessarily I do the same. And I don't know if that's a reflection of the way the world's changed and sort of work-life balance and hybrid working. But at the time, he was very much leading by example, and he got me involved in a couple of nice sort of niche projects that maybe sort of other project managers weren't getting involved in, and so we got on well. So yeah, there's a few there, but I think really value sort of Lawrence's friendship and style, and enjoyed working with Steve as well.
Brilliant. And then last question: if there was a book that you would gift to another business owner, what would it be if there is one? If you're a reader?
Wow, I didn't see that one coming. A book. I think there's lots of things there. There's various books around business growth and strategies around business. I can't put my finger on one particularly, to be honest, Paul. I think my view on things like that is all knowledge is good. You learn from it. You take from it what you want to. But I'd be lying if I said I'd read sort of loads of business strategy or business growth type books. I think we're finding our way in our own way, and hopefully it's a successful way. And we've got our own style, which is unique in some ways, but not unique in others. It's do a good job, be a good person, work with good clients, build relationships, and work will follow. So yeah, I hope that doesn't make me sound too not well read, but
no, not at all. Because I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think you can't try and emulate somebody else's business. You've got to do what's right for you guys and find your way. And sometimes actually the best way to learn, the best way to become really credible as a business owner is to make mistakes on the way. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be books out there. I'm sure Richard Branson's written a book, and the guys on the Dragon's Den have written books and things like that. That probably wouldn't be where I would go.
No, good. Ross, it's been a lovely chat. Thank you, and thank you for coming down here to do it as well. Really appreciate it. I'm convinced Dom will keep on growing. I've got a lot of time, as you know, for you and Andy, and I think you're building something that's going to be just a really nice, good sized, decent business within the Northeast, and maybe beyond there. Like you say, at some point you may outgrow the market in the Northeast. But no, thanks for being on.
Thanks.